In fact, I just have to tell like one personal thing. One shrink I went to for a long time said to me after a time, he said, you know, when you first came to me, it was 3 months before I couldn't figure out if you were a construction worker. I was teaching at Rutgers, or a professor. Said, I didn't know if you were a construction worker or a professor, but I couldn't ask. It took this amount of time for her to figure it out. So that was me.
And you were both.
Yeah, that was my thing. This piece of like one element melting away and another cubic figure that exactly the same volume. But I witnessed this accident, construction, engineering accident once, working on a big Bell Labs job off the Garden State Parkway, where the form was built for concrete, and Bell Lab insisted on I forget the term for it, a continuous pour, I forgot the real term, where the concrete doesn't set, it's all together before it sets. The form wasn't strong enough and it broke out at the bottom. By the time 20, 30 trucks came in, lined up like ants, the bottom of it blew out and the concrete is pouring over the landscape. Was great how they had to get dozers in to spread it out enough to break it up in pieces, but this was the kind of experience that
Huge.
gave me so much of a sense of material, like hard, soft materials, how a material accommodates itself to a landscape and so forth.
This one, a couple of reasons I'm really interested in this, because this was sort of, you were kind of being labeled as a minimalist or a post-minimalist, and there's certainly like references to McCracken with this piece.
I was first, but...
You were first. But you said something interesting about minimalism the other day when we had lunch. Do you remember what you said?
No.
You basically said like there was nothing else left to do with it,
Yeah,
so
okay,
I didn't want to participate.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this, I mean, this sort of curve happened naturally. This was like the materials kind of reacting.
Yeah. Should I say something how it's made?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I always want the pieces to make them, as much as possible, make themselves. That goes through almost everything. I'd rather be the unmoved mover behind to set it up for the piece to make itself. So it's a piece of masonite leaned against the wall. I may trace the contour of it and then construct the plywood and masonite support and then cover it with resin.
I mean, this is sort of indicative of all your work. For me, it's the idea of like, is it being contained or is it being supported? Does it need this kind of structure or can it exist without it? And I think, I mean, ultimately the answer is it's both, and it ends up being a relationship between you and the material.
And about authority and laws and control and systems and so forth. So this floppy material on its own just leans against the wall. If the authority of the
government
is in the government, right? Old lefties, you have a few years on me, but
So these, like,
this
before,
is really an oldie.
yeah, well, when people were walking in, there was what's that video called? The Gesture Project?
video.
So it was Gary drawing on a screen, sort of with these parameters, like a frame basically, and he's going with his marker, just of these predetermined kind of shapes, and it's being filmed. And that's how all these were made also. This is called Box Piece, and what it was a box filled with however many drawings and paintings.
Listen about that. Yeah, you're trapped. You're like an animal in a cage, and you just walk back and forth day and day. This kind of it seems futile and tragic and very dark somehow. And I thought, okay, it's really over. And so I made this piece that it's the end of it. And you put everything in the box, and I sold it to a guy in Geneva. He said, I love this piece. I put the TV on top of it, so I don't think it was ever shown again. But I like the idea very much of the piece, but then I realized there was something in the doing that's meditative. I'm not the meditative type, but if I'm doing this, I can get into this in a certain way. And I even said, awkwardly, I couldn't think of how exactly to express it, but the hand seeks the gesture that's the motion of the universe, what feels the most soothing and comforting and expansive to make within a really narrow confine. Still interests me. I learned it for myself. I learned the really important things. I bought a box of 1 by 1 foot square tiles, and I made 100 pieces. After a while, I said I have to make them different, and they all were. After 25, they all were contrivances. And then it dawned on me: the thing is, make them all the same. And the difference between them will be what's interesting. The difference will come down to itself by trying to do it. And I still feel that if you do the same thing again and again, what's interesting is it comes to some kind of resolution instead of arbitrarily trying to be, or deliberately trying to be different and unique.
Which is a great segue to the black paintings, which is the sort of last part of this.
So they're paintings, they're circles, and you just fit more of them in. How they squeeze in, and then it's just a process to make them. And I did them in the 70s, and I went back to them again a couple of different times, and I'm working on them right now. I was interested in the horizon and gravity, so these big circles, and they settle down.
One of the first times I met Gary, you said, I don't paint paintings, I make paintings. Yeah. And these are actually made. There's a structure created, there's a frame around them, there's like metal that's stretched, they're clipped in, there's a turkey baster. I mean, you're not using a brush and
then I just apply the paint with the turkey baster because I don't want gestural energy. I just want it to kind of ooze out. And it's the same in all of these. So it just oozes out in a way. Especially in the pieces in the show, they're really controlled by the given format. Yeah. So to end it, I just think we end it.
We can.
I just feel like I have enough. And we only hit on some of the things that I'm interested in that I think